engine set off on a journey that made transport history when it hauled 2 coaches to a country railway station in Sussex. It was the very first train on a preserved section of the old British Railways network. Volunteers had raised enough money to keep the line going at a time when BR had condemned its entire steam fleet to the scrapyard and closed many of its branch lines. If Stepney could be saved, maybe there was hope for other engines. All over Britain, steam enthusiasts waited with fingers crossed as a revolution began in the Bluebell Woods, which gave our first heritage line its name, the Bluebell Railway. There's only one way to start on the railways, and that's at the bottom, working your way up. Dawn at the Bluebell is a time of wet ash and swirling steam. The engines wake up slowly, wrapping themselves in mist. One minute you're in bright sunlight, the next moment you're gone, as a bank of fog drifts slowly through the yard. Somewhere in the middle of it all is 110 tons of steel. There might be half a dozen engines in action, so safety is paramount. The foreman's job needs concentration, and who better to produce order out of chaos than a school teacher? During the week, Barbara Jarvis teaches small children in Sussex how to play the violin. But at weekends, by way of relaxation, she helps run the railway, one of 100 volunteers on duty today. Her job is to get the locomotives out of the engine shed and into the station platforms, precisely when they need them.
The 11:10 departure from Kent and Kingscote will now start for platform number 2.
Barbara will be juggling with locomotives till lunchtime.
We have an order in which the engines are required to depart from the yard, and it's my responsibility to make sure that each engine has had an opportunity to coal up, do their pit work and be on the dummy ready to depart.
As the first train leaves, cleaners prepare to attack the giant of the fleet, which takes about 3 hours to prepare.
Bear in mind you're dealing with a locomotive that's 149 tonnes in weight and 66 foot long. The first thing you have to do is get the oily rags and the paraffin out and scrub the wheels and motion and try and get them up to the standard that we like to keep them in.
Nice oily rag, eh?
As you can see, it's big, it's full of character. For its size, I think it's probably one of the easiest locomotives that we've got to drive and fire. It's very user-friendly. Bearing in mind, when it was designed in the late 50s, it was designed to burn rubbish coal that was available. It's designed for ease of maintenance. You can get to every part of it very easily. It's just wonderful. And then when you're doing 25 mile an hour up the line with a 6-coach train behind you, you get a talking coming up towards the tunnel. You'd like that.
The giant engine makes light work of the Bluebell's steep gradients. But Stepney's glad of some help from a younger engine, though both of these machines are over 100 years old and make a comic pairing as they waddle up the bank. Now it's the giant's turn to lumber into action. Dave, the driver, prepares to give the metal elephant some encouragement.
Steam brake off, back brake off.
With a steam locomotive, you pump the regulator as delicately as heavy machinery will allow, and then you wait for something to happen. It takes about 10 years of training to be given control of a Bluebell locomotive in public traffic. The safety standards are so high that these amateurs are arguably more professional than today's mainline recruits, who might be in control of a crowded commuter train after weeks rather than years of training. But what's the appeal of labouring as an unpaid volunteer in the knowledge that a driving job is years away?
The appeal of it is to eventually fire and one day drive one of the largest collections of steam locomotives in the country. The thrill of pulling into a hoisted platform on a locomotive and train like this, you just can't describe, you just got to do it. And once you've done it, you'll know why we do it.
Horsey Cairns, this is Horsey Cairns.
Stepney and Son have made it up the hill to Horsted Cairns, where the heaving platforms tell their own story about the magic of steam. There's a complete cross-section of society, young and old, waiting for their ride on the train.
They stand well clear of the platform edge as the train approaches. Please do not open any of the carriage doors until the train has come to a complete stand.
The families who've turned up at the Bluebell Railway are in for a treat. They may not know it yet, but today happens to be a special event. The nearby fields have also been taken over by steam, and steam is quite capable of generating all the juice required to power a fun fair. Of course, the greatest funfair ride of all is the train itself. Even the most high-tech Disney resort is careful to include an old-fashioned train ride, complete with plastic steam engine at the front. But this is no plastic replica. This is the real thing, and everyone who rides on it is actually visiting a museum, whether they realize it or not. It's a living museum constructed by thousands of unpaid hands.
Well, the Bluebell relies on an immense deal of goodwill, and certainly need a good humour to work here as well. We have a lot of people who will give up time. They'll sign on at 4 or 5 in the morning to light up engines, and so on a busy day like today we'll be here to 8, 9 o'clock at night tidying up after everybody's gone home. And in between then you've got the trains to run, so we need 3 signalmen, we need 4 guards, we need somewhere in the region of 20 crews just to drive and fire our locomotives. Then add to that all the ancillary people, like our people who are providing the catering, our station staff, and here, I mean, there's 5 of us here today on the station. All of a sudden those numbers click into place, and all of a sudden you've got 100 people here giving up their time.
At first, you might not notice just how many volunteers are at work. They're tucked away in quiet corners with pots of southern green paint. Their day's work might be restoring an old station bench or helping to reclaim a parcels van from the ravages of time.
This is about a living museum. The Bluebell is about, yes, it is preserving the past, but it's a living thing, and I think that's the most important thing. Museums are great, but it's nice to see the thing working.
The first train of the day has reached Kingscote, the railway's northern outpost, though soon it'll be extended to East Grinstead. Dave, the signalman, is waiting. He's driven from Kent for another day's solitary confinement in one of the railway's lonelier outposts, but he loves it here. Signallers don't just linger at the line side to wave, however pleasant. He's checking there's a red light on the end of the train. It's his guarantee they haven't left a couple of coaches behind. For a few moments, the little signal box is peaceful again, awaiting the passage of the next train.
When there are no trains here, it's wonderful. Because there's a lot of wildlife, there are foxes and rabbits and lots of birds, and I'm a nature lover and I watch through the binoculars at the wildlife when I've not got any duties to perform. At times it can get hectic. What you try to do here, if you're running a 2-train service, is as the up train is going into the loop, to try to get the down train moving before he comes to a stand. And that involves some pretty nifty work on the token machine and with the signals and the points to do that. I just love steam railways. I did my national service at Longmoor on the Longmoor Military Railway. I worked for British Rail as a trainee surveyor, and I've always had a love for steam and preservation of steam, and I just love it here.
If Dave the signalman has the quietest job on the railway, then Dave the driver has the noisiest. His giant locomotive is in full cry as it climbs towards the summit. Firing these engines is an art form that takes years to perfect. All the footplate personnel work as firemen before they ever get their hands on the regulator. Today there's a third man in the cab, and the crew are glad of an extra pair of eyes. On a right-hand bend, the driver can't see where he's going.
Got another signal just after this curve. This is the inner home, which Roland's going to call out because I can't see it. And the road's off, so put a bit of brake in.
They're approaching Horsted Canes. Beyond the trees is what used to be the branch line to Ardingly.
bringing us down. Still on the uphill here, so it slows down quite nicely on its own. But a bit of brake to help us.
The present-day Bluebell Railway was once part of a route to Lewes, and the other fork, now just an overgrown embankment, ran in the Brighton direction.
And we're just coming to a stand at the inner home for some reason.
This long-forgotten railway junction has recently become a focal point of railway activity. There's a plan to change the transport map of Sussex by adding a new cross-country route that begins here. And as the big engine tiptoes away into Horsted Keynes station, an observant passenger on the train might notice that there's something distinctly odd going on among the bushes. So why are a group of men pushing a carriage and chanting, "Towards Ardingly"? Well, the significant bit isn't the carriage, it's the track. They've relayed the first few yards of that historic link with the Brighton line. For the moment, it's a temporary resting place for rolling stock. But the workmen are well aware that their apparently comical labours have another purpose.
We purchased the trackbed of the Ardingly line, which will one day enable us to run back through Ardingly and hopefully into Haywards Heath. One of the key things I think that we have to do now is that what we do today, we're setting in stone for the people of tomorrow. And I hope perhaps in 40 years' time that, yes, we will be riding on a train down towards Haywards Heath. And I actually hope it's a lot sooner than that, but I'm sure, you know, Horsted Keynes will become the pearl of the south, that nice little junction station and lines diverging.
But first, there's a bit of gardening to do. It's amazing how high the weeds grow in half a century. It'll need a bit of trimming back. What drives them on is the prospect of a new chapter for the Bluebell Railway. When they get back to Haywards Heath and forward to East Grinstead, Sussex will have regained a cross-country transport link that was so carelessly thrown away. And engines like this, built in the 1950s and 60s, still have years of life in them. The Bluebell has 40 locomotives, dozens of carriages, thousands of supporters. Its potential is enormous.
Bluebell was lucky because in its formative years, I mean, it was the first on the scene. It was able to purchase some real gems of rolling stock. But even now, we're able to find coach bodies that are part of people's houses that we're able to extract and restore. And it's actually quite exciting to discover a real gem tucked away in some corner of a yard somewhere.
They came from a farmer's field in West Sussex. They're Stroudley coaches and they date from about 1875, and they're going to be restored over time by the volunteers on the Bluebell Railway. They'll take several years because they need an extensive restoration.
When the Bluebell Railway was formed, it may have seemed like a bunch of middle-aged men playing with a train set. But now it's simply too big to be laughed at. For this is a multi-million-pound business, which just happens to have an unusual product, plus the kind of workforce most firms can only dream of, particularly on payday. As Stepney leaves the station, having first arrived there 40 years ago on the most unlikely of rescue missions, who can tell what a snapshot of the Bluebell Railway will be like in another 40 years?
The history books will tell you about how Bluebell began on May the 17th, 1960, when Stepney and two coaches steamed into Horsted Keynes and they were handed over to the then fledgling Bluebell Railway Preservation Society. And since then, I mean, the railway's gone from strength to strength.